Thank you for being here. It's just an incredible honor, even just recently, to finally meet you and talk with you and get to know you. And I'm just really thrilled to have you here. So as I always say, good luck with this crowd. So thank you.
So, dear respected Thai, dear respected Sangha, tonight we have an opportunity to spend some time together. And first of all, I would like to invite everybody to sit back, sit comfortably. We're going to do a triple guided meditation before we start the share. Breathing in, I know I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I know I'm breathing out. In, out. Breathing in a long breath or a short breath. I'm aware of my breath, long or short. Not trying to control our breath, just being aware, just being present with our breath. Breathing in, I'm aware of my body. Breathing out, relaxing my body. Aware of body, relaxing body. Letting go of anything that we're holding on to. Letting go of anything that we're carrying. Just for this moment, just right here, just right now. It's okay to let it go. We don't have to continually hold on to it forever. Breathing in, relaxing my body from my neck all the way down to my toes. Allowing my neck to soften, allowing my shoulders to drop from my ears, allowing my lower back to disengage. Allowing any tension that I'm holding in my thighs, in my legs, allowing it to just melt away. Just for this moment, just right here, just right now, coming back to our body. Breathing in, becoming aware of our body sitting on our cushion or in the seats, feeling our feet firmly planted underneath us, feeling the stable posture as we sit, but at the same time, allowing ourselves to be at rest and to relax. So, dear respected Sangha, now we're going to have some fun because we're going to have a question and answer session instead of me giving a Dharma talk right away, because of the simple fact that I also want to get to know you guys, right? And I also want you guys to be able to get to know me, right? Instead of just jumping straight into a Dharma talk. So the floor is open if there's any questions that you have, because I'm sure some of you probably saw my bio about being a former monk, as well as being in the military, as well as leaving the monastic order to come back out and work with veterans. So I would like to also hear from the rest of the community, because I think Jeff and I were talking about possibly coming back here regularly to spend time with you guys. So I would like to, yes.
Thank you so much for being here tonight. I was just curious, what is your greatest life lesson?
My greatest
Life lesson.
life lesson? My greatest life lesson would probably be living in the present moment, right? Because that's the only time that we have. That's our appointment with life, right? Within psychology, they usually say if you live in the past, you're dealing quite a bit with your depression, right? When you're living too far into the future, you're living with your anxiety, right? Because we're always constantly worrying about what's coming next, We can't fully live in the present. But what we're forgetting is the present moment. If we learn how to live with the present moment, you also have the tools to be able to take care of your future, right? Because if you learn how to stop, you learn how to breathe, you learn how to not feed the negativity or the negative thoughts, then you already know how to take care of the future, right? But the other aspect of it is when we learn how to take care of the present, right? 5 minutes from now, what does that become? It becomes your past, right? But when it becomes your past, you now have a better past than you did before. Because now you can breathe, you can smile, you can do a lot more things, right? Kind of like within the Native American proverb, where the First Nation people, they talk about, depending on which wolf you feed, the white wolf or the black wolf, right, is gonna be the one that grows. So do you choose to continue to feed your anxiety? Or do you choose to look at it a different way, right? So for instance, when I'm working with my veterans, right, a lot of us probably have been, especially if they were in the last conflicts, right, they would probably have gone through IEDs, which are the explosive devices they've been shot at, they've heard rockets, they've heard mortars and all that, right? So now when July 4th comes around, New Year comes around, the rockets go off, right? The firecrackers go off. They get triggered because of the fact that it's a signal of an attack coming, right? But when we learn how to switch that and have them be able to deregulate themselves through the practice of being able to recognize, hey, I'm okay. I'm not in the war zone anymore. I'm here at home, right? And switching that sound to a different sound. And one of the things that I use to explain to my veterans, for instance, the ones that have been in combat, the ones that have been in service, right? we wouldn't think out of going outside of the wire, which is outside of our camp area, without wearing our bulletproof vest, without wearing our flak jacket, right? Because that would be insane, right? You would get shot at, right? So that's the same thing with mindfulness. Mindfulness is that flak jacket. The reason why I say mindfulness is that flak jacket is because for us, right, when we practice mindfulness, what does that allow us to do? Huh?
Be in the moment.
Be in the moment. What else?
I was gonna ask a different question. Did you use your Buddhist philosophy while you were at war to maintain yourself, or did you just walk out of it and become a different person and then come back in?
So that's a good question. To honestly tell you the truth, my 5 mindfulness trainings went out the door because at that time I was 17 years old, being away from my parents, not having to have any rules and regulations, so to say. Not really, because in the military we know that there's rules and regulations in there. But like being away from my parents, not having them always over me, right? I met my teacher, Thich and Hanh, in 1989. That's actually when I got ordained from him with my 5 mindfulness training. And at that time, Thich gave me the name Strength of the Heart. He probably knew that I was probably going into the military, and giving me the 5 mindfulness name, Strength of the Heart, hopefully would help me to have that power to be able to come back. I served until 95, and then I left. I struggled quite a bit with PTSD coming back because of the fact that I served with I was a Navy corpsman, which is a Navy medic, attached to a Marine Corps unit, which then was a special operations unit. And the funny thing is, when I went into the Navy, I thought about becoming a Navy SEAL until I went halfway through the training program, and I was all like, no. I don't want to be a Navy SEAL because I saw some of the Navy SEALs that I knew, the light switch, kind of like the analogy of a light switch, right? When we keep turning it on and off, on and off and off, what happens? Eventually that switch breaks, or you have the switch get stuck in the middle, right? And so with our special operations community, a lot of the time they were called to be the United States 911, right? And so you stick them into a combat situation, have them come back home, and then expect them to return to normal life. Well, you keep doing that, what's going to happen? They're going to get stuck in the middle when they're back here in the United States, right? And I started noticing that. So I was like, okay, no, I don't think so. I want to be a medic, so I can help work on and heal people and patch people up. Lo and behold, I get done with medic training, and I found out I get attached to a Marine Corps special unit instead of the Navy special unit. And so, yeah, I spent time there. And then I got out in 95. And then I struggled. I had nightmares and everything else. And then 2002 is when I went to France and I asked to be ordained by Thich. And I was in the community for a while. And at that time, Thich and Sister Chacom, which is his right-hand person, they were all like, hurry up, get him in here, get him trained, otherwise he might change his mind and leave. Because I also had quite a bit of suffering in me. And Thich and Sister Chacom were at that time thinking maybe he might last for 3 months. So if we can help him as much as we can in 3 months, but I ended up staying on and becoming a Dharma teacher. I received my Dharma lamp in 2010. from Thai ancestral home. And through that time, also a number of my military friends are no longer with me. They're no longer here. And that's the reason why I left and became a worker for the VA to be able to help fellow veterans. Because currently, right now, the current rate of suicide is actually 45 a day among our returning veterans. The statistics is saying 23 to 24. That is actually not right. Duke recently redid a study, and it's actually 45 a day due to the fact that they miscalculated veterans that are taking their life by suicide by cop. Right? You automatically know if you point a gun, whether it's loaded or not, at a police officer, you're going to get shot. Right? So a number of veterans, that's what they're doing. A number of female veterans, they will use prescribed medication and overdose. So those are the two areas that they were not taking account for. They were just marking down as, death by cop or death by, overdose. But they weren't relating it back to the veteran population, right? And the reason why a lot of that also happens is because kind of like we all heard the analogy of like the football player, right? The football player in high school, he used to be the team captain. He used to have all these glory days, right? A number of them do not know what to do after they take off that uniform. And so they struggle with their purpose of being. Right? And so that is a big part of the work that I do, right? One of the programs that I actually work for the VA right now as a whole health coach. So we do an alternative approach to healing, right? Instead of talking to the veteran about what is the matter with them, we ask them what matters to them, right? Because when we allow them to speak what we call Nhat, which is their mission, aspiration, and purpose, right? When we ask them, what is their mission? A lot of them are like, I don't know what my mission is. Well, guess what? You're back here in the United States. Your mission right now is to make that connection with your family, right? Because a lot of them don't have that connection with their family. Because a lot of times their deployment is 18 months. That's a long time to be away from your family. And then on top of that, when you come back, the spouse that was at home with the kids are used to running to that spouse to ask them for help or whatever it is that they want, right? So now that spouse that was in service now has to make a connection with their family again because they haven't been in the life of their kids for so long. So, any other questions?
What are some of the skills that you work on with your veterans? Like, I know trying to have them in the present moment. And you talked about a little bit of like heat stress regulation. But are there any like more specific things that you have found successful? I work in outreach, and I work with people who have trauma. Some of them are veterans. So I'm just very curious what you found successful.
So the question was basically that, what is it? What are the modalities or what are the things that I help them with that might be helpful to someone that has trauma or working with my veterans? And one of the couple of the things that I do is I've connected with a gentleman by the name of Clint Goss. He basically created Flutopia, which is basically anything and everything, all stuff about flutes, especially the Native American flutes, right? And so one of the things that I do with my veterans, or one of the classes that I now have at the VA is healing sounds of the Native American flute, right? Because with the Native American flute, I don't have to know what your trauma is. I don't have to know what's going on with you. I can teach you the basics of it, which is covering up the 5 holes and being able to blow in it, right? And you can take it out to nature, mimic the sound of nature, and let go of your feelings through the sound of music, right? And there's an article that is done by Clint Goss and Richard Davison, out of the University of Wisconsin Mindfulness Center there, where they talk about your brain on flute, right? When you learn how to play the Native American flute, it actually kicks your brainwave into turbo drive, because you're not only relying on somebody else to play that music for you to help you deregulate, right? Now you can do it for yourself. You are no longer having to rely on somebody else. And that's the cool thing with the healing sounds of the Native American flute. The other modality that I do, Tai Chi, right? Tai Chi, mindful movements, because of the simple fact, if you look at stagnant water, right? What happens with stagnant water?
Doesn't move.
Huh?
It doesn't move.
Yeah, it doesn't move. There's no life in it, right? So when there's no life in it, what happens? You have algae grow, you have bacteria grow, right? What's that algae and that bacteria? That's the aching and creaking. That's us not feeling our body moving. So therefore, what do we focus on? We focus on complaining, right? Oh, my back hurts. Oh, my knees hurt, right? But we're forgetting that if we actually move the body, even if it's a little bit a day, that helps lubricate our joints, right? So you don't have to do that actual 100% martial arts Tai Chi, right? You can do Tai Chi for health, where it's slow moving and you're moving your body gently, right? And especially for older people, it's great because you're able to, and one of the things that I tell my veterans, meet your body where it's at, right? Because of the fact that we're veterans, we have been injured in our service, right? So our body is not 100% normal, right? Our body has gone through the wear and tear a lot more than somebody else has, because of the fact that sometimes we're required to wear an 80-pound backpack and go jumping over walls. You know, like your body's only going to handle so much of that, right? So that's exactly the reason why I remind our veterans, meet yourself where you're at, right? It's okay to step out of the comfort zone a little bit, but again, we are no longer in the military, so you don't have to go full force. Because if you go full force, what's going to happen? Your body's really going to start hurting, right? Because whatever age we're at now, we're not like when we were 20 years old or 18, 19 when we were first in the military and we're like, oh yeah, I'm bulletproof, nothing hurts me. Well, yeah, but we're not like that anymore, right? So we age, everything's bothering us, right? So those are some of the things that I help the veterans with. I also teach a 8-week beginner's mindfulness, right? Where I teach them some breathing tools. I teach them the breathing tools that help them when they're having a panic attack, when they're having anxiety. Because when they're having a panic attack or anxiety, they're forgetting one thing, right? And that one thing is our brain can only focus on one thing 100% of the time, right? And the funny thing is, John Kabat-Zinn and Harvard Medical, about 15 years ago, did a research study about multitasking, right? And the report came out and said, when we multitask, that's like us blowing drunk on a breathalyzer. Because our brain is not designed to multitask. We are not a quad-core computer chip. We may think we are. And business and society nowadays wants us to be like a quad chip because of the fact that they think that it's more productive, right? But the actuality, you don't do anything 100%, right? So that leaves a lot more room for error.
One follow-up question. How do I make referrals to your program?
So the VA, so if you go to basically the La Jolla VA, I cover 3 locations. So I am in Oceanside, Kearney Mesa, and La Jolla. Because of the fact that I'm going to be teaching quite a bit there. And Kim, sitting over there, she's one of my colleagues, and we're actually going to be working and doing a pain management group. And so her and I will be instructing the orientation for pain management. So you can refer veterans to there and ask them to ask for whole health.
Thank you, Brother Mike.
Yes.
All right, so I feel like there's this narrative that people with anxiety, depression, PTSD are totally out of control of their feelings. And I'm just wondering, in your experience and with the wisdom you have, I'm wondering what your idea is on that, especially in cases of maybe mental illness or lack of health.
So the question was basically people that have PTSD or anxiety or depression, they're not in touch with their feelings. And the biggest part of that is you also have to understand that it can also be an overload of emotions, right? That is causing that. Because like when we have anxiety, we don't have anxiety out of nowhere, right? That anxiety comes on because we've been triggered, right? And that trigger, it can be the same trigger as PTSD, right? Somebody with PTSD has triggers that have been associated with traumatic events, right? And for you to have PTSD, as a civilian, you don't have to be in combat, right? You can be in a car accident. You can see somebody get hurt, traumatically, and that affects us, right? Because it goes back to our nervous system. It goes back to our limbic system, right? And when that hits overdrive, it happens, right? But the thing is, the key component is when you have depression, when you have PTSD, when you have anxiety, right? All that comes back down to our breath. Because our breath is the anchor. Our breath allows us to be able to deregulate, right? How many of us know how to breathe? Right? Everybody laughs when I ask that question, right? Because they're all like, yeah, I'd be dead if I wasn't breathing, right? But the thing is, do we really know how to breathe? Right? Because our breathing is like a GPS system, right? How do we breathe when we're very anxious or when we're scared? How's our breathing? Very shallow, very fast, right? How do we breathe when we're relaxed, deep, when we're calm? Slowly, deeper, right? So use that as your gauge to know when something's going on, right? You don't have to wait until it gets full blown, because you can already sense your blood pressure going up, the heat in your body rising, your breath changing, right? Those are all signals that something's going on. Allow yourself the opportunity to be mindful now, instead of having to wait until you have to go to the emergency room. Right? Because a lot of times your emergency room is not necessarily going to know to tell you to, hey, come back to your breathing. Right? The only time our breath is not with us is when we're 6 feet under. So all of you guys are sitting here in this room, so I don't think you're 6 feet under yet, right? So all of you guys can breathe. That's the anchor. And the reason why I say that's the anchor, I'm going to share a story with you. When I was a monastic, and I was in France at the Root Temple, Plum Village, I was in charge of the teams that year, and my teacher, Thich, actually asked me to put the teen program on lockdown. And I was all like, what happened that I have to put this teen program on lockdown, Thich? And he didn't really share with me, but I ended up finding out later on that there was some things that happened between some of the male teenagers and female teenagers that happened during the summer retreat. That's the reason why Thich asked me to put the teen program on lockdown. Well, we were, one of my younger monastic brothers and myself, both of us trained in Aikido. So we thought, okay, for the teen boys, we were gonna do an Aikido class. And so we did an Aikido training for the teenagers, the boys and the girls as well. And there was a young adult that decided to come down to the Aikido class. And my younger monastic brother and myself, we both have our karate uniforms on. And so this young adult decided to rush me. And I was all like, okay. I saw myself get into my stance. I saw myself go revert back to my military training and my martial arts, my actual martial arts training, and started pinpointing his weaknesses. But the thing is, I came back to my own breath. And I was all like, okay, how were you when you were 19, 20 years old? You know, there's a group of young ladies here. You want to impress them. So what's the best way to impress them? Charge their head instructor. So I was all like, is it worth me doing what I was planning on doing? No. Because if I would have followed through without stopping myself to breathe, that young adult would probably not be walking. But by me being able to stop, breathe, reflect, and pause, that saved him. Then the next thing that I had to deal with was, are you going to be able to let go of your ego? Because if you let this person take you down, everybody's going to be all like, oh, Brother Bear got taken down. Am I going to be okay with that? Yeah, I'll be okay with it. So he ended up taking me down to the ground. But as we were on the ground, I also did a reverse wrist lock to let him know, like, hey, if this continues on, somebody's going to get hurt. So that's just to let him know that, hey, we both got back up. He walked away, he's all like, yeah, okay, whatever, you know, but at least the young kid is still walking around perfectly fine, right? Instead of me totally doing what my military training taught me to do, which is, hey, if the person can't stand, they can't fight.
You mentioned pain management. Do you interface with the addiction community at the VA at all?
What was that?
You mentioned pain management.
Mm-hmm.
Do you interface with the addiction side of employers?
Yes, we do. So we have, as part of our pain management team, we also have the pharmacy clinicians that also look at the opioid side, as well as the other medications that might not be so well suited for people that are also struggling with addiction. So we also look at other modalities to possibly be able to help with some of that. But because of the fact that I'm not a clinical pharmacist, I wouldn't be able to necessarily answer that, because of the fact that I focus more on the holistic side of it, where using like mindfulness, meditation, Tai Chi, gardening. So we will be launching a garden group at the VA in La Jolla for veterans and employees there. So that way, that's a way to be able to help them not have to think about their pain as much, but also at the same time, taking those vegetables that they end up growing and giving them to our nutritionist so that they can teach them how to cook mindfully and how to cook healthy food. Because a big part of it, there's 8 circles that make up the circle of whole health, right? Which includes our surrounding, our relationships, recharge, how we recharge our body, how we rest and relax, our spiritual practices, and our soul. And then it also talks about moving the body. It talks about food and drink. It talks about personal and professional development. And it talks about relationships with our family, coworkers, and friends. And so those are some of the areas that we focus on working on with veterans, because they're all interconnected. When you work on one, it helps change the other ones, right? And we help them by helping them create SMART goals, right? Which are specific, measurable, attainable, action oriented, and time bound. Because we start from this short-term goal, which is maybe 1 month out, then we go to a 3-month, then we go to a 6-month, and 1 year. So that way we really define it and really make it worthwhile for them. Any other questions?
Can you share some of the results you've seen with the veterans you work with? Like a case study kind of, or how you see people change?
Sure. So it brings me back to one of the sutras that I was telling Jeff earlier that I really like to share with my veterans, is the sutra on Angulimala, right? Because that sutra shows us that we can change if we want to, right? Because the sutra originally is about a young boy that was born under the sign of a thief. And so his dad, who is a chieftain, didn't want to have a son that was born under the sign of a thief. So he devised a plan to try to kill his son. And the mom was all like, no way. So the mom took the son and left and raised him to be a loving, kind person. And during the course of his studies, his friends, his classmates got jealous of him. And so they told the teacher that he was after the teacher's position. And so the teacher devised a plan to destroy the kid by having them perform or murder people and take their fingers and create 1,000 finger garland. And so he came in contact with the Buddha. The Buddha ordained him and was able to change him. And he went on his way And then later in life, he ran into those people that he hurt, like the family members of the people that he hurt, and he was beaten up by them. And so the Buddha also asked if he was okay and reminded him, this is the karma that you have to pay. You know, and Angulimala or Ahimsa was willing to pay that price because he knew that he caused that suffering. You know, so that helps to remind the veterans that they have a possible way out. And to go directly into your question, I worked with, when I was living in Memphis, I worked with the VA in Memphis, right? I was part of their PTSD group. And we had a 6-month in-house session where eventually the veterans were able to close the door, lay down, close their eyes, and lay on the floor while I was guiding them through a guided meditation on the floor. For most veterans, good luck with that, right? Because they always want to make sure that what's going on. One of my veterans, at first, when I first started inviting the bells, he would jump because he served during Vietnam, right? And temple bells were going off left and right. He had no idea what they were signaling, if they were signaling anything. So that was a trigger for him. How he overcame that, I gave him the bell. I showed him how to invite that bell, right? So now, inviting that sound of the bell is now in his control. And he learned to be able to be a bell master, how to properly invite the bell so it can sound, to be able to help your fellow brothers and sisters be able to practice. That program has now grown. The program that I started in Memphis, they now do 45 minutes of meditation every single day. They now also do a silent retreat for 1 day every 3 months. So all of these can help. You know, and I can't wait to get started. I just recently moved here from Sacramento, and our pain management team is going to be launching our very first class September 11th. You know, and I can't wait to get started. You know, I still have my veteran brothers and sisters in Los Angeles that call me all the time. You know, here in San Diego, we're very fortunate because we have the Veterans Yoga Project, right? That does trauma-informed yoga therapy. And it's free for veterans. And then hopefully I can work with my team because there's a number of, I've thought about this for a number of years and changing the acronym for PTSD, right? Because when you say PTSD, a lot of people have a negative connotation of the word PTSD. Instead of using post-traumatic stress disorder, let's change it to positive thinking, self-care development, right? Because as a human being, we tend to gravitate towards the negative, right? And so when you can change somebody's thoughts, you can change somebody's way of looking at things in a more positive aspect. That's automatically next, right? Self-care, right? How many of us do that? A lot of us probably don't take enough time to do that self-care for ourselves, right? So when we self-care for ourselves, we give them the tools. We give them kind of like Felix the cat, right? Felix the cat is a cartoon character that has a little black bag And inside that little black bag, there's anything and everything he needs, right? That's his toolbox. He can reach in there and pull out any of those tools that he needs. That's the same thing. Build that toolbox for the veteran. Build that toolbox for whoever it is. They don't have to get that. Right? When we practice it enough, whether it's sitting, whether it's walking meditation, whether it's yoga nidra, right? Those all become tools that we use regularly. And the more that we use those tools, the more that it develops inside of us, the more that it becomes second nature, the more that it becomes muscle memory. So we don't have to feel that it's a task for us. Okay? All of us have checking accounts, savings accounts, right? Look at your practice, whether it's sitting, whether it's walking, whatever that practice is, right? When you do that practice, that's like investing in yourself. That's like taking money to the bank. Because if you don't have money in an account, and you go to the ATM, you put your card in, and you get that blue screen of death, where it says there's nothing in the account, right? That's exactly the same thing. If you don't practice it, you have nothing in the account. So don't expect your breath to automatically slow down when you have anxiety if you haven't practiced how to do it when you're not anxious. Yes.
You spend a fair amount of time with Thich Nhat or that. Could you tell us something which you learned from them which was extremely valuable?
So the question was, since I spent a number of years, 13 or so years with Thich, what was one of the things that I really learned from him? Well, with Thich, he teaches by the way he walks, he stands, every little thing that he does, right? And I had an opportunity to be his attendant. And it's great being his attendant, but also it can be quite fearful. Because of the fact that Thich has eyes that are very piercing. And like when he looks at you, you're all like, okay. So one time I remember I was his attendant, right? And I was sitting and I was rocking Thich. He was sitting in his hammock on the back porch of where he lives. And I was sitting by his side, rocking his hammock before him. And Thich goes, hypothetical question. I was like, great. Thich and his hypothetical questions. I know it's going to be a doozer. So, because Thich knows my background, right? And so Thich goes, hypothetically speaking, if there was somebody that was shooting 500 people with a sniper rifle, what would you do? And at that time, I was only ordained for 4 months as a novice. And I was sitting there going, first mindfulness training, not killing. And I knew that I was struggling. Right? Thich goes, let me help you. And he was all like, basically sharing that if I don't do anything, and I have the training that I've had, and I don't do anything, I'm allowing somebody to hurt 500 people. So I'm contributing to that person being able to hurt 500 people. But Thich also reminded me, come back to what's in your heart. Because if you're doing it out of anger, you're doing it out of revenge. Don't do it. Because it's going to eat you alive. If you're doing it out of compassion, then do it. You're willing to take that current action. Because you're able to stop that person and be able to help 500 people not have to pass. Right? Because we all know, like I said before, If you point a gun at a police officer, what's gonna happen? You're gonna die, right? You're gonna get shot. Same thing with somebody that is doing that kind of act, right? If they're up there with a sniper rifle shooting at 500 people, the police, FBI, ATF, whatever, they're not gonna be as nice to that person, right? But there's also a but to it, right? A sniper rifle, you have to use two hands to be able to operate that sniper rifle. Right? If you're a good enough shot, you can injure the person, or you can continue shooting at that person so they don't have a chance to injure them, right? If you shoot them in the arm and they can't operate that sniper rifle, they can't shoot anybody. If you're a really good shot and you can shoot and disable that gun, then you didn't kill him and you didn't allow him to hurt anybody else, right? So it all comes back to what's in your heart.
So when you're talking about it's all about motive. The motive for all your behavior is more important than the behavior itself.
Mm-hmm. So motive is very important, right? Because in the story of Buddha, right, when they came up to Buddha and they were asking, where did this deer go? The Buddhas are like, that way, right? Because the Buddha didn't want the hunter to be able to kill the deer, right? So the Buddha was willing to take the karmic action of lying, basically, to be able to save the deer. Yes?
I don't know if the answer is right, sorry about that. But what's the difference between self-preservation versus self-care versus selfishness?
What?
What's the difference between self-preservation, self-care, and versus selfishness? Like, say, in the work environment, like in our daily lives.
So, work preservation, self-care.
Well, self-preservation, self-care, is there a difference in versus, like, say, selfishness? Because there's always the ends.
Yeah. So, and selfishness. So, the thing is, what I like to use is the analogy of a lifeguard, right? If you don't know how to swim, how are you supposed to save someone? Right? So if you don't have anything to pour out, how are you supposed to help anyone else? So the thing is, it might sound selfish, but you need to take care of yourself first, right? Because you're no good to your family if you don't have the mental space, if you don't have the capacity to be able to be present with them, right? Because you're so zapped from work, whatever the case may be, right? So you need to create that time to be able to have that space for yourself, right? And that's the thing is, we don't have to say, this is my time, this is work time, right? What we need to do is incorporate it in our life, make it a part of every single day of our life. Yeah, we might sacrifice getting up a little bit earlier, right? But the thing is, what's the benefit of it, right? Like you getting up earlier, right? Like for instance, one of my coworkers is complaining about driving from Kearney Mesa to Oceanside, right? 45-minute, maybe an hour drive, right? But at least you're not stuck on the 405, right? If you were stuck on the 405, that 1 hour drive is gonna turn into a lot longer drive, right? So again, and if you know that, take off earlier in the morning. If you know when the high times come, where it's high traffic time or high traffic time going home, avoid those times. Go in earlier. leave earlier, right? Those are all things that you can probably do, right? And I'm sure if you explain to your boss, they living here in California, they'll understand, right? That's why I kind of find it funny when I was living in Memphis or in Nashville, Tennessee, they were complaining about traffic. I'm like, what? It's like 20 minutes. They were stuck in traffic for 20 minutes. I'm all like, that's nothing. You know, come over to California and sit on the 405, especially around Los Angeles. You'll see how long you're going to be stuck in traffic, right? You know, so again, it goes back to our perception. It goes back to, you know, everything, how we view it, right? And the little funny thing is, we all know the camera company Canon, right? You know where they took that name from? Hanh, the Bodhisattva of great compassion, right? And the funny thing is, just like a camera, what lens do we have is going to depend on what we see, right? If you have a 35 millimeter lens, what's your viewpoint? If you have a telephoto lens, what's your viewpoint? Right? So that's the same thing with us in our lives. What do we choose to focus on? Just like a camera, right? You can blur out the background and have the person in the picture in focus.
What is your vision for the next 5 years?
My vision for the next 5 years, I don't know the future. So, but the only thing that I do know is being here right now, because I'm also very fortunate. Being within my family, it runs in our family tradition. So my stepdad and my great-grandfather and my grandfather, basically all through the lineage, they practice the Japanese tradition of Buddhist practice. And so within the Japanese tradition, the monks were allowed to have family. So from my great-great-grandfather all the way down to my sixth uncle, all the males were all monastics. My stepdad is still a monk. And so my stepdad is actually in our center in New York. My mom and my grandmother are both nuns. They actually practice at Deer Park. My mom runs the bookshop. So if you happen to go up to Deer Park and you see my mom in the bookshop, that's my mom. My grandmother is 95 years old. She's still practicing. She's still a nun at Deer Park. I'm fortunate that I get to live like maybe 2 minutes, because I live actually at Deer Park. I live at the gatehouse. So there's a mobile home that's on the property, and I'm like 2 minutes away from my mom and grandma. So I get a chance to see them every weekend, because I'm always in there helping the sisters and helping my mom with technical stuff in her bookshop. And I remember the time when I was a monastic, one of my jobs in the monastery was IT. And so my mom, who ordained after me, so technically, if I was still a monk, she would be my younger monastic sister. And same thing with my grandmother. And so one of my elder brothers decided to joke around with my mom and go, "Why don't you go ask your elder brother to help you with your computer problems?" You know, so, and my grandmother to this day still doesn't take that, she still takes the opportunity to jab at me. She's all like, "Hey, if you were still a monk, You would be 22 years in the practice already. I was like, thanks, Graham. You know, but it took a long time for my mom to really come around to support my decision to leave the order, because she wanted me to stay in the order. And the community wanted me to stay, but I was all like, sorry, I have to go. Because one of my best friends, Sergeant Hanh, who was a Marine, he ended up taking his life in 2011. He was back home in Texas with his family, and his relationship with his fiance spiraled and went down the drain, and so he spiraled and he ended up taking his life. And he was a huge veteran advocate. You know, and so that's my whole purpose. That's the reason why I left. When I was a novice and the U.S. went to war the second time with Iraq and Afghan, Thich came back from a trip to Italy. I was working in the registration office, and he found out that a friend of mine died. It wasn't just a friend, it was 7 guys that I served with. And Thich looked at me and he goes, Thich was at a loss for words for a minute. And then he's all like, I'm sorry to hear that. And then he turned to me and goes, what are you gonna do for them? And I'm sitting there scratching my head going, what do you mean? You know, they're already dead. Thich all like, yeah, they're already dead. But what are you gonna do for the other ones that are gonna be coming home, that are gonna have the difficulties of adjusting to life? So that lit the fire in me to really solidify my practice, of walking, sitting, breathing, because I know those are the things that are going to be able to help them. You know, like one of the practices that I teach my veterans is oceanic breathing. So if you guys want, we can try to do the oceanic breathing, right? So one of the practice is simple. Taking your hand, cupping your hand, just like if you're getting ready to wear a breathing mask, right? Put it over your nose and mouth. Take a deep breath in, exhaling it out. Taking a deep breath in, exhaling it out. That's oceanic breathing, right? The reason why it helps when you're having an anxiety attack is because now you can feel your breath. Because your breath is coming out, hitting your hand, coming up into your nostril, right? So that allows you to deregulate because now you can feel your breath. When you're having a panic attack, you can't feel your breath in your chest, right? That's the reason why abdominal breathing works, right? Placing your hand on your abdomen, because when you feel the rise and fall of your abdomen, it helps signify in your brain, hey, I'm breathing, right? Another practice that I teach my veterans is nostril breathing, right? Taking one finger, placing it on one side, breathing in with the open side, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out. Right? They also do this practice in yoga because what it's doing is it's activating your right side, left side, right side, left side. Because if you're thinking about right side, left side, what are you no longer thinking about? Your anxiety. Yes.
Thank you for all you do. I work in a meeting before too, and thank you for the foundation. It's amazing and very sad to many ways. So I'm a healthcare worker. How do you, serve a community, but also be detached from the results? Because sometimes the results are not gonna be what you wanted. A lot of times it's not. how do you let that go? Can you, it's still not feel that burnout or whatever that we want, like you want to keep going and someone gets what, but it's not just you, you have to go over that home.
So basically, how do you deal with that and not get burnt out is basically you have to create a sangha. You have to create a community within your work environment, right? And start by encouraging your coworkers, right? How hard is it to take a 5-minute mindfulness break, right? How hard is it to do a 5-minute breathing exercise? Start there. Like when I have a meeting with my whole health coach team, we start off with a 5-minute mindful moment, right? One of us takes turns leading, so that way all of us have the skill to be able to lead it. So I'm not the only one leading it, right? Or, for instance, taking a 5 minutes out to do a 5-minute mindful movement. Those are all things that help where, you try to do the best that you can. And it becomes easier when you're not the only person, right? Because if you're the only person, it's an uphill battle. And that's why Tayal Group will always remind us, make your workplace into your sangha. Make your family into your sangha. Because you're around your family the most. You're around your colleagues the most, right? Outside of spending time at home, unless we're retired, where else are we? We're at work, right? So why not use your work environment to your benefit? Create that sangha within your work environment. Create the community of like-minded people that are wanting to breathe, wanting to do mindful movement, wanting to do holistic healing. And there's nothing that, because you used to work at the VA, there's nothing that says that you can't borrow from the whole health program at the VA to create a whole health program at where you're at. Right? So, Jeff, how long are we going?
One more question.
Okay.
Can you give us a glimpse of your monastic tenure in France, your day-to-day as a monk at the Flood Monastery?
Okay, so my daily routine when I was a monastic, basically 5 o'clock in the morning, wake up. 5:30 is normally down at the meditation hall doing a sitting meditation. Sitting meditation will usually be about 45 minutes in the morning. Then we have noble silence, and you have exercise time. And then about 6:30, 7 o'clock, depending on the season, is going to depend on breakfast time. So breakfast is normally in silence. After you wash your dishes, then you can talk. And then after that, depending on, again, what time of season, is going to depend on what the next activity is, whether it's novice class for the novices, or if it's working meditation, like right now in the summertime, it would be working meditation, because we would want to work earlier in the morning instead of later in the afternoon. And then after that, we would basically have walking meditation at 11 o'clock, lunch is at noon, and then we have a rest period. And then at 2 o'clock, picking back up, whether it be working meditation or classes for the novices, the Dharma teachers, those are the times that we use to go deeper into our practice, looking at scriptures, looking at sutras, things like that, researching additional things that we want to research. And then normally 5:30 in the afternoon is sitting meditation time. Sitting meditation in the evenings will also include chanting as well as sutra readings and things like that. So normally that's about an hour and a half. And then dinner at 6:30-ish for the ones that want to eat dinner. You don't have to eat dinner. And then after that, it's a self-study time. And then normally it lights out by 10 o'clock. So that way we can get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. And everything's done on a bell schedule. So you will hear bells invited throughout the monastery to signal the next activity. And then also when you hear the sounds of the bell, we all stop to be able to come back to our breathing. Allowing ourselves that time and that space to be able to stop and not be worried. And when we do working meditation, it's not about getting the job done. It's about being focused on what you're doing, what's coming up for you when you're doing that work. Because we all know that even if we complete that project, there's always another project waiting for us, right? So why be in a hurry, right? Take your time, breathe, enjoy what you're doing. Okay. So that's a glimpse. And then it all depends on if we have a retreat going on. Yeah, retreats start getting really hectic after a while. Or if you happen to be in charge of the teen program or the kids program, then that's all going to be a whole different thing. And then usually Mondays is a lazy morning or a lazy day. We call it lazy day because there's no structure for that day. You can just enjoy the day, whether you want to wake up early in the morning, go for a hike, go sit and drink tea, go do some Tai Chi, whatever. There's no schedule for that day until the evening. Thursdays usually is a mindfulness day. Sunday is a mindfulness day. Sunday at the monastery is usually when the public come up. And so the monastics are leading practices for the lay community that come up that day. So you're all welcome to come to Deer Park. Jeff knows how to reach me if there's a group that wants to come up, because due to the protocol with COVID, they've started limiting the amount of people being able to come up. But yeah, that's usually our daily practice. This October, we're actually gonna have all the monastics from the other 2 centers here in the United States. So we have 3 monasteries here in the United States. Deer Park is our nearest one in Escondido. We have one in the Midwest or South, which is Magnolia Grove, which is in Batesville, Mississippi. And then we have one in Pine Bush, New York. So those are the 3 centers here in the United States. And all 3 of them will be here in October because they're doing a mini US tour right now. So. Thank you very much for your time. Jeff?
Before you all head out, our Dharma will send you do some announcements.
Thank you so much for your time, Brother Michael. Hello, everyone. My name is Ksenia. I'm tonight's host, and then Miss Vicky helped open up as well. We opened the Dharma Bum Temple 17 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those who lead, we are not nuns or monks or gurus or masters or teachers, and are not looking for students. We're simply practitioners sharing our interpretation of the practice. Every night we offer different classes led by different people from various Buddhist traditions. We host a recovery sangha that meets several times a week with anyone for addiction that is downstairs. And our free redistribution program is every Thursday at 5 p.m. We have classes and programs every day, and everything we offer here is always free. The full schedule is on our website, and it's also posted in the hallway and the entryway above the shoe rack. We have a lending library in the hall as well, and if you see a book that you like, feel free to borrow it and bring it back whenever you are done with it. Before you go, please straighten your chair and cushions, and if a few people could help close the windows as you leave, we would really appreciate it. Thank you all for being here. We wish you well, and we really hope to see you again.
Thank you again, Brother Michael. Do you want to?
Yeah, so just before we leave, I'm gonna go ahead and play the Native American flute. So please sit and relax a little bit.
Thank you again.